Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of The End Credits, the podcast where two brothers discuss their thoughts on a film of their choosing. I'm Dominic.
I'm Jonathan.
And today we are talking about Christopher Nolan's epic science fiction film, Interstellar.
Right off the bat, it's obvious. I think obviously we're going to be taking a look at it kind of as if it's kind of a successor or spiritual successor for 2001. So throughout this, I guess, review, we're going to be, at least I'm going to be looking at it as if I watched 2001 Space Odyssey, because looking at it now, there is like clear evidence that Christopher Nolan took inspiration from it.
Yeah, definitely.
But I guess as a space epic, I think it has some good qualities. Like overall, I think it has its strongest suit, especially like in the beginning, is basically setting up characters and bonds and just like a straightforward mission.
Right, yeah.
And I think that as an overall like hook works well, but there are like, again, instances kind of in the same vein as Inception, where it took liberties in other realms, which is in contrast with 2001, where again everything's very much based in science and like checks out, I guess.
Right. I definitely agree. And we'll definitely get more into that after we get some of the details for the film.
Interstellar was directed by Christopher Nolan with a release date of October 26, 2014. At a runtime of 2 hours and 49 minutes, and the genre is an epic science fiction. It stars Matthew McConaughey, Anne Hathaway, Jessica Chastain, and Bill Irwin. In Earth's future, a global crop blight and second dust bowl are slowly rendering the planet uninhabitable. Professor Brand, a brilliant NASA physicist, is working on plans to save mankind by transporting Earth's population to a new home via a wormhole. But first, Brand must send former NASA pilot Cooper and a team of researchers through the wormhole and across the galaxy to find out which of the three planets could be mankind's new home.
It's certainly an interesting story. It like takes place in a future Earth, and that's even like interesting too, to just like understand, okay, where are we now, what the setting is for the film.
Yeah, I want to say it's like not too distant in the future, like maybe 10 years, just because of obviously like the cars and the look and like schools and just I guess clothing fashion. Everything looks like, okay, it could be, today realistically.
Right. So
it's not like too far in the future to be like some futuristic, like a Blade Runner, something like that.
Right.
It's imagine 10 years from now a new dust bowl came and Earth is basically
being consumed by it.
Yeah. So like at the beginning, we really get a grasp on what the world of Interstellar is showing us, with, again, like, especially when we go into Matthew McConaughey's character Cooper, he has a relationship with his kids, especially Murph. And we get to just see how their bond happens and basically what his stances are in this world. He's a former pilot. He feels as if, he was born either too early or too late, depending on how you view it. And he has like this pioneer energy about him that he's kind of like restless. He doesn't want to be this farmer that I guess society, when he comes to the school,
it's like made him out to be,
Yeah, he wants to be more than that, larger than life. And basically, at the beginning, we get this whole mission thing, like they eventually find some sort of NASA hidden base,
Right.
and it leads them to possibly go to save humanity from a crumbling Earth. And that's like set very much in the beginning. That's just like an early on, okay, here's where this film's gonna go. But again, I want to like strongly emphasize that throughout this beginning, uh, family bonds is what this time is used for. Like,
Right.
it's basically, again, we're shown his relationship with Murph, especially because they have this similarities. This is, a father and a daughter, bonding or whatnot. And she's young at this point.
She's
So
10.
yeah, 10. So she really looks up to him. And basically the struggle here is like, should Cooper save the world and possibly like not come back, or should he stay with his daughter and like see her grow up and whatnot? And that's a struggle. You don't want to see your parents leave or whatnot, and there's a possibility you might not come back. And that's the like struggle for, you can really feel it with the emotion, especially how they act.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's one of Interstellar's like strong suits, where you really do feel this sense of bond, and it very much happens early on, and I will applaud Interstellar for that.
Yeah, I certainly noticed that in the very beginning and in the opening sequences as well. It's definitely pulling at the emotional ties, especially with the family. And yeah, like you said, it is a struggle because you don't want to see like Cooper leave, and like how you were mentioning that it's a parent. It's hard to. I think it's a easy way to possibly have like some kind of like ties to that. And what's interesting about Interstellar is that with all the Nolan films we've been watching up to this point, this is the one that feels different than the rest, in that it feels like, and maybe you agree with this and maybe you don't, I feel like this is the first film that it almost seems like we've been kind of moving away from the classic or the regular maybe like ideas that Nolan usually plays with, at least what it feels like in the beginning. And almost like the in terms of the way the lines are written and delivered, it feels like we almost it almost feels like it's too few lines for a Nolan film, if that makes any sense. Because I feel like the other ones are definitely driven in some kind of unique presentation of the story, and we have to do a lot of explaining in order to get to our like objective. And I feel like this one has such little dialogue, and yet it's a lot, I think, for a modern film, which is strange. But it's definitely more than 2001: A Space Odyssey.
I actually want to disagree in the sense of about the, I guess I want to call the Christopher Nolan dialogue sequence on like explaining stuff. It's just not presented yet. It's there still in Interstellar, and that's when we eventually get into describing the whole space mission. But like again, early on with just trying to connect with family, that I agree will escapes the Christopher Nolan. I don't want to call it like bad explaining, but like it feels, you can just tell that it's like a script being told out.
Yeah.
And I don't feel like we get there until we really basically get involved with NASA and like what we should do. I want to say that's once they get there and describe that, that's where it really happens.
Okay. Yeah, I could see what you're saying. I would argue though that I feel like even to that point it's still like even dumbed down. Like I feel like this is a drastic difference. And again, like I've mentioned for Batman Begins, maybe it's just due to the nature of a superhero film, but to me, I felt like Interstellar, like even as we got to the NASA and we discovered all of that, and then so on and so forth. I felt like it was still like dumbed down. This I'm saying, I feel like this movie just feels different than the other ones. Feels different from Batman Begins, Memento, and Inception. Even Inception. Inception feels stronger and more grounded than Interstellar does, in my opinion. Um, just like in terms of like delivering the story. Like it kind of feels like like you said, it feels like it's a script, but it kind of feels like that at all times for me.
For Interstellar.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I felt like I never felt a moment when it started feeling like, okay, I'm really like suspending my disbelief now. And now I'm kind of like, all right, I can fall into this.
I want to agree with you in the sense of, again, the space mission, everything with connecting with family, his whole family ties, especially at the beginning. I think that's the strong suit where you don't feel like it's some script being written out, and it actually feels like, okay, there's substance there. While as when it comes to the whole space mission, that's where it kind of goes, okay, like, again, it's tough because, with 2001, I feel like as if it just did everything a little bit better in the sense of like science fiction. If you're going to go like an epic realm, then maybe you can claim that Interstellar has some like epic moments to follow up with.
Definitely.
But yeah, I do agree with you that it does feel a little bit less grounded than like the other stuff. However, like it also feels just different production wise. It looks as if they had better quality cameras and better quality, just more. I don't know about the budget, to compare the two, but it does feel just different in editing style and pacing, especially with like early on. They do a whole lot of widescreen to full screen changes.
Yeah.
Which like I kind of question from like an editing standpoint on like what it really does. Does it like, hone your senses to like a particular moment when you go into widescreen versus like the full screen? For me, it was a little like jarring at some points. It's like, oh, whoa, it just changed and,
Yeah, there it goes again. Yeah.
Yeah. So like I kind of question like how they really like narrowed down which pieces, it's supposed to be wide to full, because it was definitely, if you noticed it, it definitely was like out there, you noticed it for the rest of the film.
Yeah.
But if you like, maybe for a first time viewing, you probably missed it, particularly honest, because I don't actually remember it when I watched it the first time, but definitely when we watched it this time for the podcast, I was like, oh, whoa, this is a little weird.
Yeah, I was actually trying to figure out the significance behind the changes, and was trying to like pinpoint like, okay, it maybe the widescreen we're only changing to widescreen when it comes up during certain scenes. And I was starting to do that, but then after a while I kind of just forgot about it, and it became more of just like a jarring thing, and I didn't think about, all right, what are the ties here, if any. Yeah, I thought it was a little strange that it was going back and forth between full and widescreen. I'm sure there's a reason. I'm sure there's an intention. And it probably has something to do with like particular scenes being shot with widescreen and then the other ones in full, or edited that way. And yeah, it definitely stuck out like a sore thumb if you noticed it for the rest of the movie.
Yeah. So basically, like as we continue in this film, we start to see, the mission and what NASA's involvement and stuff with like Michael Caine's character, Professor Brand. And again, here's like when it kind of gets like, okay, when we learn about NASA, just how their viewpoints are, oh, we're trying to escape the Earth to find another planet because Earth is just failing. And like it's believable, for our world, because like how we hear like climate change is like happening, and the Earth is not going to be around forever.
The
right?
Earth's dying, yeah.
So like it's just an exaggerated form of like years later happening. So I don't think we got enough time with each individual character to like I guess feel something yet for everybody, especially like with everybody who goes on the mission, you know, like Cooper, then Dr. Brand, Professor Brand's daughter, and then the other two researchers, which like again, I watched this film on like I don't even remember their name. Maybe I think Doyle was one, the first one that we went to the water planet.
Yeah.
And then the other guys, like, I guess that's the problem because, like, sure they went on the mission and sure we saw like what they could do, but like, were they really essential, like characters to be telling in the story? Like, I don't know. Sure, you felt for something because it's another human being, you know. Right. Once we do, you know, escape into other places, but like, I don't know. It's not like. I guess it's not like, again, I'm comparing it to 2001, you know, when Frank and Dave, you know, when Frank, you know, gets it,
yeah,
you know, I feel as if you had some sort of connection. Maybe it's just because it's two people only and Hal, but I guess they weren't on the same level. I don't want to, you know.
No, I know what you're saying. It is funny because it's ironic, I think, even because it felt like Dave had less emotion than what he should have at that moment, you know,
right.
When Frank did get launched away from the ship, and when Dave went to go save him, he seemed oddly calm, and I think as an audience member, seeing Frank just like drift off into space like that, we were a little bit more freaked out, and we were like, "What's going on here?" And yeah, I feel like some of these characters in Interstellar. Yes, we could feel it to a certain extent, but was it really worth having them there? Yes and no. And see, that's why I'm kind of like saying that I feel like, especially comparing it to like even Inception, I even felt a lot more stakes between all those different characters who were involved with the Inception plan than I did with some of the characters in Interstellar. And I just feel like I don't know if it's just like time. Just Nolan's style changing over the course of time, which it happens. I just felt like, I don't know, I just felt like there was more, I just felt like I couldn't get with it. It's weird because I enjoyed Interstellar. Don't get me wrong. I just feel like, you know, like how you're mentioning with the characters and whatnot, I just felt like, okay, why are they even here? We lose them and now we're down to, you know, Cooper and Dr. Brand. So at a certain point,
yeah, you kind of, there wasn't no like, okay, I guess that they, you know, you didn't really have like a reason, like, okay, what do they bring to the team? And that's, you know, like, again,
that's what I shouldn't feel.
It's very harsh to say like, oh, it's another human being, you know, It's like, but like, I don't know.
But if we're treating them as like characters,
I guess, yeah, I guess it's just different from just movies compared to like real life, you know, in that sense, you know, like in real life, obviously it's just another human being, you know. Obviously, they brought something, but for in a movie, you really have to like, you know, again, up the ante, exaggerate a little bit more, and again, these characters just didn't have it, I guess, quote unquote, and I guess like that, it's kind of it fell to the wayside in comparison to the family bonds that Interstellar does give a lot of time. Right. And does really well, you know, again with Cooper and Murph. Their bond basically is the biggest character driven storyline that we see just throughout the whole film. And the other characters kind of felt to the wayside, you know?
Felt a little bit distant, yeah.
Yeah, in comparison. It's also a fact that just Interstellar has a different, it kind of, again, going back to 2001, it has a different, its film time is in real time. They do a lot of skips without you really noticing or knowing, and especially like when, you know, they go for the deep sleep from Earth to Saturn, you know, that's a bunch of time, right? But we don't really see that time that happens, you know. It's just, okay, we're here to the next place and let's go. We're here to the next place and let's go. And in contrast with 2001, a lot of scenes were really just there, and you had time to take in every little bit and kind of form your own thoughts and viewpoints to it. While Interstellar is like, bam, next destination, bam, next destination, bam. And you kind of could, you feel as if you couldn't, again, take in everything. And I want to say applaud to 2001, where I just enjoy that style a little bit more.
I completely agree. I felt like things in 2001 were a lot more drawn out. And I love how you said that it gave us enough time to form our own opinions and ideas and whatever like thoughts came to our mind for said place in 2001. And I just think that Interstellar, it goes at a quick pace and like we're here at 1 minute and we're here the next. And not to say that there isn't anything ambiguous in Interstellar, because I think there is, but I think 2001 just does it in a different way. And obviously, I think it takes more time. But another interesting thing, though, as well, is with 2001, I like how it's almost kind of like a shift from 2001. In Interstellar, we begin with kind of like the bad, like how we see how like the state of the earth and is deteriorating and whatnot. And in 2001, well, if we skip ahead from the dawn of man, everything's pretty like it's beautiful. We see the beauty of space, and I like how we have a difference with Interstellar that it's not necessarily that same kind of beauty.
Right.
It plays with that understanding of like beauty and the unknown, and we slowly drift into madness. Whereas in Interstellar, it wasn't. I don't think it necessarily was like going through that kind of. It wasn't set for that kind of goal,
Right.
Like you said, it was driven in the emotional ties of the family between Cooper and Murph.
Right. It was about saving the world, or the lives on Earth. While in 2001, it's very much, it's just an exploration, and then again,
Right.
like you said, just develops into chaos, and yeah, they just have different story ways. I do want to talk about when Interstellar tries to, we're in space now, and it tries to tell us certain science stuff, like with wormholes, black holes, and just how it works.
Mm-hmm.
I think again, here's another point where it's like not Interstellar's strong suit, and again, it goes to like I just been noticing it through Christopher Nolan's films, where here's where it feels really scripted. It just feels out of place. Like, okay,
We better explain this to the audience.
yeah, and it's like, whoa, this is like not the. It just didn't, flow well, and it's kind of like, oh, okay, I'm learning now, and I don't know. It just it stuck out to me.
I definitely noticed those parts too, especially like when we're bringing up like the idea of when they finally come to the wormhole, and we get that little bit of like how a wormhole works, and it just fell out of place.
Yeah,
I totally agree. It just fell out of place, and like another thing too, I guess with Cooper's character, it just felt like he had an answer to everything, and it just kind of felt like, oh, what a coincidence that he has this knowledge, which it's kind of understandable because he was a pilot at one point, and he did that for, well, we don't really know how long, but it's clear that he's experienced, and he flew for NASA before, so it kind of makes sense. But I mean, we don't really know how long it's been since he's done any of that stuff.
right.
And it just felt like he had an answer to everything. And it just kind of felt like, really?
Can you explain when?
Yeah, particularly when they were talking about Gargantua and when they needed to go and research the different planets that the previous team had went to go like discover for like a habitable planet. And he talks about how we can utilize the gravitational pull of Gargantua in order to like reduce
fuel,
like save fuel.
Or no, save time but lose a little bit more fuel.
Yeah, something along those lines. And I don't know, it just felt like it was just like, oh man, okay, he's just got these ideas.
Yeah, it's like the other characters are scientists, and they should know a little bit more about
Right.
him, and he's just a pilot, quote unquote.
Yeah.
So yeah, I guess
Not
I
to
see that.
not to discredit like Cooper and like I mean, who doesn't love Matthew McConaughey? Like
Right.
I want to see him shine. Don't get me
Right.
wrong, but it just kind of felt like a movie. And in that point, not that that's I don't know. It was just something that I picked up on and it just kind of took me out of the moment.
Yeah, that's totally understandable. Yeah, I totally get that now. Um, Also, like when we just talked about, Matthew McConaughey, I do want to give him a lot of props in this film, just because he really is like the best part of this film is like the actor and just playing different, I guess, emotions at different times. Like his believability factor is through the roof, I
Yeah,
think.
I know.
Like in every moment, it's like, okay, I believe him. Or every moment, it's like, okay, he totally feels this. Like I want to give him massive props to his acting skills and yeah,
The
I don't know.
performance.
Yeah, his performance was great.
Yeah, I know. Like, I feel like over the course of time, some of the scenes in Interstellar have become like a joke in some ways. Like I remember that moment when he, they just came back from that first planet and they lost like 23 years or something like that.
Mhm.
And he's like watching all the videos of the messages that he's missed over that course of time.
Yeah,
And like he just like starts like crying uncontrollably, and which I understand, and it was a good moment, and especially for like the first time viewing. But like I don't know, watching it again, it just kind of feels a little bit like a little over the top, and a little bit silly. But I still felt it in that moment. But it just kind of like it just it still attributes to like his kind of performance and everything and his believability, and even if it has become a little bit over the top, I still believe the guy.
Yeah, I totally understand what you're saying.
So
I do think we should talk about just when they go into like their different planets and just how it basically, I guess I want to say, visually looked nice and interesting concepts, especially again when they go through the galaxy. And just with the first planet, with it all being water and like the mountains, quote unquote, of waves.
oh yeah.
Like even though there was like nothing there when they went there,
Mhm.
I think that's a cool concept right there. Just different planets, just having a variety of different. It's just not what you see on Earth. And obviously, our real planets are like that, right? They're not at the state of how Earth is, but
Right.
just with this mountain of water coming at you, like, can waves really do that? And how scary that would be if you saw a wave, literally reach the clouds.
That'd be terrifying.
Yeah, it's like that's a terrifying thing to even see. Also with like the frozen planet that they see at Mann's area, that whole like what you see in the cover, right? It's
Yeah.
all frozen and everything like that. Like sure, again, people have went to the Antarcticas and seen how it is, but to the state where like everywhere it's just frozen, thing that perhaps be something that
Could sustain life.
yeah, maybe. I was like, oh man, that's such a weird concept too, or such a crazy thing. So we have grass in our earth, deserts, snow, even ice places, but like just a planet in ice. Again, both these worlds that we do discover, even in outer space, right?
Mhm.
It's visually appealing, Again,
Right.
going
Yep.
back to like this budget area, is like, oh man, everything looks, and seems in this epic scenario. It just works to the point where it's like, oh man, I'm really I'm really somewhere else.
Right, and I'm really in space, and I'm really on this journey with the characters. Um, yeah, and I will agree. It's really interesting when we get a chance to go and look at the different planets. And it's really sad because when we're going through and we're looking at all of them, or the two that we go and see,
Hmm.
it's really sad that they didn't have like that it wasn't going to be like the second planet that they were hoping for, you know?
Right.
Like any kind of like life that can be sustainable, that they can actually have a habitat here. And it was just really sad that neither of them came through.
It's such a weird thing, like in our reality, right? We hear about like, oh man, they found water at so and so, maybe.
Right.
It's just like, again, what are the chances that Earth is like the perfect conditions that humans could live and that there's nothing out there?
Yeah. We hope that there is, and it's certainly like in this story, they really need that other planet because Earth is like just what do they say that like it was going to be done within like the next generation of
Yeah.
kids were going to be the last to survive. So like the stakes are high for them in order to find a different or another Earth. And I think even Cooper's character like quoted and mentioned saying like, we're not going to find another one like Earth. That we're not going to find anything like this good.
Right.
But like we're going to have to try to find like something. Um, yeah, again, it's just really sad that neither of these planets came through, and I was really sad about that.
Right. Um, obviously the next arc of like our characters when they go on this mission is when they end up on this ice planet and discover Mann's whole, because he basically sends a signal out, so this place is a good area. And this character is played by Matt Damon, and I don't know if this movie came out before The Martian, but I always in the back of my mind are like making comparisons. Like, I have never seen that movie. Maybe we'll see for this podcast. But
Oh
like
yeah,
the fact that it looks similar. I don't know. Obviously I know nothing about that, but either way, when we get into this, everything's looking good. It's like, oh man, it's a perfect planet. Eventually, years after it's colonized, we can sustain life. And he makes Matt Damon or man,
Dr. Mann.
yeah, he does the whole here's the how scenario for Interstellar. He turns evil and almost kills Cooper. When dropping him down, this whole scenario. And here's like oh man, like another like nail biting scenario where like again going back to like the whole his relationship with Murph and like the family bonds. It really, again, this Interstellar does well this relationship, and also to the extent of this risk of death scenario where you're always on edge for when they go discover stuff, especially with Cooper's characters, is because you know the weight of the other characters and just how everything means to them. You're always on edge and like, oh, what could happen? And here he has a scenario where he could possibly lose air and just suffocate.
Right.
And it's like, they go into this whole conversation like, oh, what are you gonna see before you die? And I was like, oh man, this is it's just a sad and like again nail biting moment that you're like, oh please, something.
Yeah.
Why would you do this? We're out here all alone and there's nobody else. And again, you're just I can't feel but like going like
Yeah.
like this. And
Well, Dr. Mann actually does mention that like the last thing that's that you're gonna see before you die is like your children's faces or something, and then it kind of makes like the whole situation like a little like raises stakes a little bit more, I suppose, because you would think that maybe Cooper's thinking of Murph and Tom, I think is his boy's name, and like just thinking about them and whatnot. So it kind of like puts you again. We return to those like family ties and the connections and the stakes of what it means for Cooper's case. And man, you just really hate Mann for this, you know? You really hate Dr. Mann for like doing this,
Right.
but in a way, you almost like a little bit. You almost kind of sympathize with him because you understand what his position is in all of this. That he was, you know, he was scared and he didn't really have hope that there was going to be another planet out there that could sustain life like how Earth can. And, you know, I could kind of see where he's coming from, that he just wanted to be saved. He knew it was going to be possible. He just wanted he wanted to see another human again. Like, but I mean, like, if you're in that position, you got to understand, you know, what the consequences are. You know what I mean? So it just like made it all the more worse because he's supposed to be this explorer. He's supposed to do it, you know, for NASA. But I think the natural survival instincts that he even mentions, that, you know, we just want to survive and we want to always like be there. And it just sucks that like he's got to be that person to like hijack everything and just lie to them through his teeth. And oh man, I don't know. It's that moment where you're just like,
I understand, but like, oh man, you know.
yeah,
like,
exactly. It's
on.
like, really, do you have to do this? Do you really have to do this? And apparently he has to, but
yeah,
we see how that turns out for Dr. Mann when
Yeah.
he tries hijacking their ship.
yeah. Here's like another big scenario where, you know, he tries to lock on to their
To the Endurance.
yeah, and it causes like a whole array of problems because you know, basically if he does take a hold of it, he can just leave them stranded out there in this unknown planet, you know, and he can just I guess walk away free. And that does not go well. Here's another like piece where when he does fail, the audio for this is really I want to say well done. And in the fact that, you know, when we were just watching, you know, on our television, you know, everything is just all, you hear, you know, music, and you just feel all this weights or whatnot, what could happen, because, you know, they're warning him about it. And when it does happen, you know, this sudden burst, like everything just goes out, and you just hear the, you know, almost as if, you know, again, you're in his position, Mann's position, and it just, you know, you just hear this loud boom, and it's like, I don't know, you felt that. And I kind of wish I saw it in theaters just to see, you know, what this felt like at this moment, because here's like, again, another thing to like 2001, you know, just a screeching halt of a sound, you know. This obviously wasn't like the monolith moment,
No, right.
but you know, you felt this impact immediately with the audio, and it just added like this oh no, you know,
It's like an effect.
yeah,
It-
emotion to it.
Right. It's such a jarring moment because we have that loud, you know, that loud explosion, and all of a sudden we cut back into Matthew McConaughey's or Cooper's and Dr. Brand's perspective, and it's just like silent because they see the wreckage,
Mm-hmm.
because Dr. Mann was trying to dock the Endurance. And yeah, that jarring like difference between the explosion and all of a sudden nothing, it just like really puts you back in that moment of, yeah, we're in space right now, and it's just so desolate. It like
Right.
brings like the heaviness and the weight to like space and where they're at, especially in their position. And then it leads up to a really great docking scene with Cooper. And again, this is like another like shining moment with Cooper. And I always love this scene. I always love the docking sequence when, you know, he clearly sees that the Endurance has gone through an explosion, and he has the audacity to go and dock on the Endurance. And it's such like an epic moment. And again, like how we mentioned with if we have any difference between 2001, A Space Odyssey, and Interstellar, is the fact that like Interstellar falls more into this like epic genre, and like definitely like an epic moment when he goes to dock the Endurance, especially
Yeah.
like with the music and like oh, this is the best part because we can actually include like quotable lines like how I mentioned before, and Matthew McConaughey definitely has a great line here when he needs to dock when Tars, I believe, is like telling him like, we can't do it and it's not possible, and uh he just remarks back that no, it's necessary, and it just like really brings in like, oh my god, what are we gonna see here?
Yeah, with the combination of just the music and the spinning, and just the fact that again it's very impossible, unrealistic to do, and you're stranded out here. You're not. This is the only way,
Yeah,
and you have to do this, or you're basically not going anywhere. You have nothing to lose here,
right.
and the fact that it just makes it all more enjoyable. When it actually does happen, and it's like again with this music just pushing you there. It's like we have to or we can't, and yeah, it's very like alleviating when eventually it does happen, and yeah, again, this is where it's like probably the most epic scene in the entire film, probably
I would agree. Yeah,
that like had the most like I guess movie blockbuster feel to it, and obviously it's probably the most known scene out of this movie.
yeah. Um, like on the flip side, though, again, it just like how I mentioned before with like Cooper having all the answers to everything. This again kind of felt like a scene, although it was epic and it was awesome. It also felt like this kind of scene where it's like, um, so he could do this too. Like it felt like a coincidence. Like he's gonna be able to like dock on the Endurance, like, and it's almost an impossible docking like sequence that
Yeah,
he has to go through right now, especially with it that the Endurance like going. I think they said like 86 RPM, and it's
yeah.
uh like it just kind of felt like is there nothing that Matthew McConaughey can't do?
I think with the fact that he kind of through this low with almost dying, it felt good to see that okay, he can
Oh,
actually do something. So it kind of like when I was seeing it, it didn't really bother me at
oh,
all. It's
okay.
like okay, this guy almost died. At least give him a win here or
Oh,
something.
okay, yeah,
It's like come on, let's be generous here. But um, yeah, here's like another scenario where I feel like we didn't even touch on the comparison with 2001, where because obviously you can see it in this docking sequence, just the outer space camera shots of all the spaceships, out on the outside. Again, easy comparison to 2001: Space Odyssey. It you just see everything from the outside and almost just if they probably use models in here too, right, for the whole sequence. So again, clear as day, giving homage to 2001,
yeah,
and again, it looked visually nice. Definitely like I guess a quote unquote upgrade to the technology we have, or we had in 2014, and just gotta give that recognition there.
right. Yeah, it was neat to see like we can make those comparisons and see the similarities between the two films, and it's always like neat to like look back and see where we were and where we come from, or where we're at now. And I have to admit though, I almost felt like in that docking sequence when Mann was trying to dock the that like the Ranger back onto the Endurance, um, it almost felt like we had. It probably was a model, but it almost felt like a little bit of CGI, and it felt like it didn't look as great as something that I would have seen in 2001: A Space Odyssey. So it was a little bit disappointing to see that I could tell that it was fake. And in 2001, it's pretty tough to like look at something in that film and say that yeah, that's a model because it looks really impressive. And yeah, don't get me wrong, in Interstellar, the models also did look impressive as well, but that moment when Mann was getting dock on the Endurance, it looked a little off, but nonetheless, still impressive.
Um, yeah, and then basically from here we move on to like uh the whole black hole scenario where here's like an again we go back to like these how was like come on, it's not realistic scenarios where like they come up with a plan to like, okay, we can use this black hole to basically give us enough time to do this and do that. I was like, how convenient for one.
Right.
Two, come on, light can't escape this. You're gonna, there's no way you're getting out of there, through this whole scenario. And I don't know. And in this moment, it kind of like falls apart with like again going to like this realism science fiction. It's just not there anymore.
Yeah, I will agree on that because I almost felt like at this point in the film, it almost felt like we were just kind of throwing things away. Like we were just kind of like, just, okay, let's do this and let's do that and let's just kind of forget about the logic or the stakes of the film.
Yeah.
Like I felt like it was doing pretty well in that regard. And then it just kind of started like, we just got to start taking these risks now. We like, forget about the plan. And it
Yeah.
was like, well, there was still like a plan in place, but it just kind of felt like it was rushed. And again, it's like, oh, we have another answer,
Yeah, it's like we took the time to like think out some, processes and like, okay, we got to consider this and okay, we can risk this. But at this point, it's like, screw it, let's just go for it. And it's kind of like, wait, what? What?
It felt weird. It felt strange. I'll definitely agree. And it's weird because even in 2001, by the time we get to like that third act, I guess at this point we're like on the verge of hitting that third act in Interstellar, and like it just seems to like fall apart a little bit. And it's weird that how both films kind of did that same thing.
I want to say it's a little bit different though because in the way in 2001, it's not like Dave really had a choice. He
Oh right,
he got rid of he got rid of Hal and then he just had to continue. It's not like he was going back, right?
right,
And he once he does, he enters this thing that just took him, right?
yeah.
And this in this film, sure they said they didn't have enough fuel to like get to the other place, but I felt as if
And they also didn't have enough fuel to return to Earth. They said that too, as well.
oh, okay, so I don't know. It just felt like I don't know. Could we have written it some other way?
Yeah, possibly.
Because like again, it just doesn't make sense anymore. Because
Yeah,
I guess just where do you go? I understand. Like okay, so yeah, they have nothing, so let's just risk everything now. Through this black hole, but like I don't know. It just it doesn't feel. It doesn't feel like it's logically right that okay, let's risk death to again. No, it makes sense because like obviously you got nothing to lose, but like,
yeah, right.
it just doesn't feel as well. Because that like as an audience, you're like okay, obviously because we're not in their position.
Yeah,
So obviously this is just a wrong move. There's nothing to be done there.
right.
And I don't know. Again, it puts your audience in a difficult position. I'm like, okay, I understand my characters and what they're doing, but like I am not at that position in this moment in time. So I feel this sort of disconnect happening here. And I don't feel as if you want that when you're writing a film or any sort of, piece of media, you never
Right.
want this disconnect or else it kind of you lose your audience.
Yeah, it falls apart and you lose the interest and you lose you lose that interest from the audience.
Yeah.
And to be able to like suspend their disbelief and be like, all right, where are we going now? Because you want to be able to follow it. I do want to bring up like kind of the position that the characters are in at this moment, and we kind of like brushed over, and I do want to return to it just real fast. I do want to ask you like how you felt about the fact that basically their meaning to the whole like mission was all a lie, and the fact that they had no way of returning, and basically Professor Brand lied to them about we're going to be able to save the people with as long as they solve the equation of gravity, and unfortunately our characters didn't know the stakes. How did you feel about the fact that it was all just a big lie?
Obviously, like you felt down just for the characters,
Right.
but like in a realistic realm, it really makes sense. Unfortunately, as it sounds,
Yeah.
it really makes sense. Like, how are you gonna build a spaceship, a spaceship that can travel to some other realm? You know, and
Some other galaxy, right?
yeah, and get everybody on board with the idea.
Hmm.
Like, obviously, it's not gonna be smooth. You know.
No.
So as unfortunate as it sounds, just with like just the technology that I guess we have, it seemed
Like the only way?
yeah, it seemed like the only way. Unfortunately, as it sounds, like in this film, you know, because you know how we hear about like Mars expeditions and like even like Blade Runner, you know, people left to the other planets.
Right.
In this film, we don't have that like luxury. It's like, okay, we can go to this other close by, or it's acceptable to travel, you know, in like that realm. But in Interstellar, you're very much they even, you know, disagree that they even went to the moon. So, you know,
Yeah.
just looking at it that way, it's like there would have been so much issues, you know.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. It was just like one of those things where it's like, again, maybe it was like, could there have been another way? And but I'm glad that it did. Like, it makes sense, especially with the fact that Professor Brand was he already had the solution, but he already knew the answer, and that, like you said, it would have just been extremely difficult to get everyone on board with that, and to even like, well, either way, he knew the answer and he knew it wasn't going to work
Right.
because he needed the black hole and what was after that, because that was the only way to solve the equation in its entirety. And yeah, I don't know. It was just like one of those things like, oh man, it's all a big lie. And I do feel unfortunate for the characters because they didn't know. And they're out here risking their lives for what they hope is to save all the people
A
down there.
possibility.
Yeah. And the fact that like that possibility being basically crushed, you definitely feel that with the characters too. Um, but again, it does still feel strange that it feels like at this point, because they feel like they have nothing to lose, they just start not necessarily being reckless, because they do have a plan at this point, sort of, to use the gravitational pull of the black hole to manually send them to the next planet, Edmund's planet. And yeah. But it just kind of feels a little too coincidental, like, oh, we
Yeah.
can use this now and we're going to be fine.
Yeah.
Or, fine. And I guess this is probably like that. One of the most interesting parts of Interstellar that we come up to is, we do end up like using the last of the fuel that we've got for on the Endurance and on these Rangers. And an emotional scene right here, in my opinion, when Cooper does both Cooper and Tars risk their lives to go through the black hole, and instead of going with Dr. Brand, they risk their lives to go and through the black hole. And it was an emotional scene, I thought, because I obviously didn't want to just let Cooper go like that, and neither did Brand. Um, and I kind of like that quote when they say that, like, we have to leave something behind in order to go forward. And it's a true statement, but it might have been a little cheesy for the moment, but it still worked.
Yeah, I agree that it was like an emotional piece right there, you know, just the whole sacrifice moment.
Yeah.
However, like I guess just because it was again going back to this pacing of Interstellar, it was just too close to the docking sequence. That was like I didn't get enough time to like really take it all in, so I kind of felt like rushed in some ways. But I think I still felt something, but like probably if there was enough time to like really develop, you know, what we're doing, maybe you could have had like a stronger effect, just for personally for me.
Yeah.
But yeah, again, another moment just to see him, you know, both him and Tars go into the black hole which I never knew was actually like a somewhat nod to 2001. Again, when he's basically in this black nest getting quote unquote ripped apart that we see.
Yeah.
Clear nods of him just, fighting the whole. He wasn't getting caught by aliens, I guess, or I guess they kind of were because they always bring up it's they.
Yeah, it's like them. Who's them?
Yeah,
who's they?
them?
Yeah, this is a really interesting part though because like we get to go through this the black hole and like what the theoretical like becomes, and it's scary too.
Mhm.
It's certainly scary because like he's trying to report to Dr. Brandon like what he's seeing here, and obviously like it cuts out as it probably would, and or his communication system, and I don't know. It's just like this is where the film kind of like we go from, if we want to call it like the scientific areas of the film that were like probably based in science and reality, and now we're kind of going to the theoretical, and it's fun to go through this part. And I think it was also fun in 2001, A Space Odyssey, where we get to see like different planets and like the different dimension, and Cooper gets to experience that as well, and this like fifth dimension, if we want to call it that, and him being able to experience that the fifth dimension is time in a three-dimensional space that was created for him by the beings, they.
I do want to. Yeah, it's like I always think about this, before we enter the whole bookshelf scenario. That like his whole spaceship is getting like ripped apart, going just tearing into shreds, and then he ejects, and like he's just floating out there. I'm like, going. I guess he's we're in the theoretical now, right? It's like this whole spaceship ripped into shreds. Why aren't you ripping into shreds?
Right?
I was like, this spaceship could take a whole lot more beating than you can as a human being, but. Again, oh well, whatever. Let's just continue on with it. But yeah, it's a cool visual sight to see the whole. Again, I'm gonna call it the bookshelf moment where he's just a human being in this weird 3D realm.
I have to mention that with this this viewing for the podcast. I couldn't help but like in the very beginning moments of the movie, like look at the bookshelf and like when they were talking through the anomaly and then the books falling. I just couldn't help but like put my mind like all the way to the end of the film and already understand that it's Cooper just doing it all.
Yeah, me too. After you've seen it and know where it's supposed to lead, it's hard to get your mind out of what its significance is.
Yeah, and I was just like, man, that really sucks because it's really special that first time, like that first viewing, and then after you do like, obviously the second one, it just kind of like...
It's not the same.
It's not the same anymore. It can only feel kind of that same way unless if you're watching it with someone who's never seen it before. But like, yeah, it doesn't quite feel the same when you already know what the outcome is. But it's still it's still a really like neat thing that like he was able, like he's in here now and he's able like to figure out a way to communicate through Morse code and with his daughter Murph, in like different states and like different periods of like time, and like and it's just cool and neat in that way because when you even get in here, you don't even understand where you are until you realize you're in the bookshelf, until he realizes it. And it's a really neat concept that like we kind of like keep all of this represented via the bookshelf.
Yeah, yeah. With this whole bookshelf scenario, it's awesome just to see how he's able to communicate throughout time, with basically saying these moments. Oh, it was him this whole entire time. But watching this and getting the like the cuts back to the adult Murph.
Oh,
Oh man, it's still in my mind. I want to make another argument a little bit later, but it's still in my mind. It's like, how does this even make sense? How did she figure it out? It's like obviously we as viewers are watching it unfold before us, so obviously we know all the information and how everything's occurring, but there's no way that she would figure out that it was him this whole time, and get her all her books out and, eventually figure out the watch and whatnot. It's like, come on.
it was. I'll agree. It was like a little coincidental, and it felt that way. I was probably more annoyed that we had to make those those cuts or those flashbacks to when she was younger and everything. I was just kind of annoyed that like we were going back and forth like that.
Oh, yeah.
It was. I think in the first time it feels fine, but I think when you watch it again, you're just kind of like, I don't know. It's because you understand it now, so just kind of like, okay, we get it. Like it was just him.
Yeah.
But in another way, if I want to just keep it like if I'm pretending like it's a first time viewing, it's sweet as well, Like it just kind of like with all the things that had happened in the film and all the chaos and like the sadness or whatever and the loss. It felt sweet knowing that it was him all along and he was kind of like always there. And again, kind of like going back to the relationship between Murph and Cooper, between the daughter and the father. You couldn't help but like enjoy that it was him, and that it was him being able to communicate, and as he even puts it, that he was her ghost that entire time. And it could be like an emotional like moment and an emotional scene because like they were like he was like always there, and he mentions and explains that it wasn't like these other beings that sent him here, or it was him, and it was them all along that basically did it all. And it was kind of like this mind-blowing thing, and even we discovered like Tars is there, and that was cool too, the fact that Tars survived. Yeah, I don't know, there was something really neat about the whole bookshelf and the whole like the other dimension, and that we could go throughout time and we could see it, and it was all like connected, and he could communicate with it, and it was like a kind of like a mind-blowing thing, and it was really neat to see that here we are, and this is what could be past the singularity, the horizon of a black hole.
Yeah, just going back to just their connection and how she figured it out and everything. I want to say that this is what the film was trying to say, because I'm basically going to just start defending on like, technically it makes sense that she figured it out. And why is because the film tries to push this scenario that there's this other dimension, like of the love dimension, that basically
right.
we don't understand, but it could or technically is the right choice or whatnot, because Dr. Brand has this like she likes this guy named, was it Edmund?
Yeah.
Like another explorer that went on this Lazarus mission.
Yeah.
And obviously we had this whole other scenario where Cooper chose that you shouldn't be biased through love or whatnot, because that's technically not the right choice. But he ends up like taking that whole back, because he chose wrong with Mann and everything.
Yeah.
So here's like this scenario where it's because of that like love, that bonding, the family bonds. That's what told us this whole scenario. So in that realm, if we're gonna add this other dimension, quote unquote,
right,
then it makes sense.
Right.
But if you want to call that BS, then you could say, nah,
that love could supposedly like speak
Yeah,
through different dimensions and times, and
yeah. If you're gonna look at it, either way, with the love dimension, I think it works. If we want to believe in that, but without the love dimension, I think some people are gonna be like, nah, forget it.
right, yeah,
It's too far fetched.
yeah, like yeah, I think when it comes to like it depends like how people are looking at it in terms of the film, because probably for a first time viewer, they're probably suspending their disbelief and they're probably okay with it all. But I think when you go through it again and again, it's going to just kind of start diminishing, and you're probably going to think a little bit more logically. And I don't know, maybe don't count on love to save you if you're going to go through a black hole or the singularity. I don't know if love is going to be that answer, but in this
I don't know.
case,
It could be. It's a powerful force, according to Interstellar.
according to Interstellar, but I gotta even mention like when the whole like love idea is kind of like acting as something that we don't quite understand, and it can
Yeah.
go between like when Dr. Brand brought it up,
Right.
I can't help but like that was probably the hardest like moment for me to watch. Like I felt like it was pure script writing,
Oh.
and it was so difficult for me to like watch that scene happen. And I was like, do Cooper and the other guy really expect like the whole like decision making process of them choosing either Edmund's planet or Mann's planet out of the basis of love? Like you could just see it in their faces, and it was like, does she really think she's gonna convince these two?
Again, I think this is what the film tries to push, because again, it's hard to buy in at first, but again, if you look at it another way, or maybe you see it differently, then possibly what else you got to fall back on. And again, that's what it's trying to get at, I think.
Right.
And they use that again, with Murph and Cooper to basically get him out of this whole scenario, to basically like a happy ending in some ways.
Yeah, sure. And how did you feel like when the whole like that fifth dimension / tesseract like started, deteriorating? It was like falling apart, and I guess like the world was saved at this point. Cooper was able to translate like the coordinates or the code for the data that they needed, the quantum data, to Murph and everything. And now like we finally like returned.
It's a cool visual aspect because you can see it like in your peripheral vision, like it coming ever closer. It's kind of like, oh, he's not acknowledging it yet, but I see it's coming, and then eventually when it does, just bright white. It's like,
Yeah.
he even says something. I don't remember. I'm like, oh man, I kind of wish I remember what he said immediately, because he says something like, oh, what's next, or something like that. It's something to that effect.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of like, oh yeah, that's a cool visual aspect, just because you don't know if he's oh, is this heaven?
Yeah, it's like is he dying or
Yeah.
something? Like, is he actually
Yeah.
dying now?
It's like I don't know. It was a cool, very cool, intense motion to like watch it come near you, and just wanting, you're curious and like, oh, what's next, or where are we going?
Yeah, it was really neat, and it was really I was just like excited to see like where else are we gonna go from here, and like what happens now. And he's drifting out into space, and he is rediscovered. Man, I'm just glad that like at this point he's rescued, and he's like on a, because they're not on Earth, correct? They're like on some
they're on
satellite or something.
Yeah, some other spaceship, in
Man-made satellite or
something like that, near Saturn. And basically they create like a new world here. He gets up, sees the window, and it's kind of like reminds me of Inception, because how when they're in that dream world, they basically flip the street level above
Oh, right.
the the buildings and whatnot. And in this case, it's just a baseball field with some other, the rest of the town above it. And it's kind of like this weird
it's
gravity thing happening.
right.
And it's an interesting sight to see.
I gotta ask though, what hospital has a baseball field in like their backyard?
Yeah.
Like in their back lot. I'm like, wait a minute, what's happening? I was confused about that. I never noticed that the first time around, and I'm like, he's in some hospital and there's some baseball game going on in the back lot. Like, what? I don't know.
I mean, I guarantee you somewhere in the world there's a baseball field next to a hospital. So
Right.
I mean, I think it's not too far-fetched.
Yeah. Man, how cool was it though? Like when Cooper is finally back and like he's like 124, but he still looks 33 or whatever, how old he was when he first left. And oh man, I couldn't even imagine this moment of him going through and like seeing the progression and seeing what has happened since he's been been gone.
Mm-hmm.
And it must feel so strange to like even when he sees like his house has become kind of like this museum, this like exhibit that people just like walk through and everything, and then we get that explanation as to why the film started out the way it did with the clips in the very beginning, because it's just like a museum reciting the story. And it's cool to see him like go throughout and like walk throughout his house, but it's kind of like strange that like now it feels like some kind of exhibit.
Yeah,
and it must feel weird for him.
It's like it's a set,
Yeah.
For the film. It's kind of like, it's kind of like this weird. It feels different, and it doesn't feel like a real place.
Just imagine
anymore.
if you're home or just like turn it to some exhibit.
Yeah, it definitely has this different feeling again, being all clean and whatnot, and I don't know. It's just interesting to see, just because he lived this, and now people are saying, oh, it's history or whatnot. So it's definitely like a wall kind of feeling.
Yeah, and then I would say that like it gets even more emotional at the moment when man, he finally gets to reunite with his daughter.
Yeah, so this one was like, oh man.
Yeah, like you better be biting your tongue at this point.
Yeah, it's like, if you felt something when in Inception, when he has that, Fisher has that like father moments.
Oh yeah, that father son moment.
Here's like a daughter father moment. It's like, oh man, it's like, again, it's if you don't feel something, you're like, who are you? Or are you human or whatnot? It's like,
Yeah, it's definitely a good moment. I totally agree. It's definitely probably my favorite moment of the film when they finally get to reunite Murph and Cooper. Yeah, I don't know. They're like, especially with like the whole movie going through and like we're trying to understand or trying to get across this good relationship that the two of them have, and then it obviously became strained and we didn't want to see that, and now it's kind of just like a reconciliation, and we get to finally just it's a closure that we needed.
Yeah, I think this return is just much more impactful, just because throughout the film, he's been trying to save time so that he can come back as quickly as possible, and it just didn't happen.
Yeah, look where that got him.
Yeah, it's like, I don't know, it's sad because he left her as this little kid, and then now she's older than him now, and about to basically pass away here, and it's kind of like, oh man, it's just it's a sad moment because all that time's gone, and you can't get that back, really.
Right. Yeah, there's so much that probably happened to him in that whole like, I don't know, week or a few days that it's been, or maybe like
for him, how he feels like. Yeah.
Oh man, I couldn't even imagine. It's crazy. And then Cooper basically gets sent out to go and back out and go look for Dr. Brand.
Yeah, here's like a weird moment for the film because it feels as if they might have tried to set up a possible sequel with it, because Dr. Brand, we don't know what happened to her.
Right.
Cooper was saved but when she basically left the black hole, we don't know if she was saved or whatnot, or she found. We only like get a hint that
She landed on
yeah,
Edmund's planet.
she landed, but we didn't see Edmund at all. So is it just her now or whatnot? And yeah, it's kind of weird that they, or Christopher Nolan, or anybody involved in this film, they kind of left this one open to like a kind of how in Inception it's like open to interpretation here,
Right.
or in this one it's maybe we can come back to it. I just feel as if it probably didn't need it, so I kind of question like even why they did it to begin with. So if anything, it's kind of like one of the more it's odd in comparison to in Inception, because I don't really think it's necessary to ever come back to the story ever, because I think the strongest bond was Murph and Cooper. I don't think it was Brand had anything to do with it.
Yeah.
Personally, so yeah, when this film ends, I'm kind of like questioning, why the openness.
I don't think there was any intention from Nolan to create a sequel. I think it was more about just trying to tie up loose ends with Dr. Brand's character, and just to let the people know that she's still out there, she is alive, and Cooper just has to go save her. And I think that was basically the main thing, just to give her her and that character just a feeling of hope, I suppose, that a feeling that she's gonna be saved, especially like with Cooper going back out there again, which is, I think, is kind of crazy that he's
Right.
after all of that he's willing to go and save Dr. Brand. But yeah, I think it was probably more about just tying up the loose ends and giving a little bit of like a sense of like honor and respect for the Dr. Brand character, and we just can't like forget about her.
Yeah.
I think it probably would have been worse how we just like not even
Acknowledge
her. Yeah. So overall, I enjoyed Interstellar the very first viewing that I had of it. And I think like over the course of time, like just watching it again, it just doesn't have the same effect for me. And personally, like if we compare it to 2001, which in some ways we kind of really can't, because they're two different films. They both have different goals in mind. And so like with that in mind, I can't really say like one's better than the other. I did enjoy 2001: A Space Odyssey more so than Interstellar. I just felt like Interstellar was, especially after a second viewing, it feels different than Nolan's other films too. It just feels like it's almost like dumbing down what he's done previously, and it feels more like that, closer to modern blockbuster-esque, in that like we just get the main plot points really quickly. We get to the action, we get to the exciting stuff. We don't really like explain, and we don't really like tie up loose ends that well. It's still an enjoyable movie, don't get me wrong. I really do. I still enjoy the film, but I'm just like, I'm really picking up on those problems,
It's funny because I felt that way in Inception, and in this one, I still do feel that way. I think it started around the Inception era for Christopher Nolan. Yeah, it's probably, I don't want to say like too. I don't want to say simple, yeah, because it's not.
Yeah,
but it's I don't know. It felt too fast in comparison to like 2001. I feel like I needed a little bit more time to really take in stuff.
Yeah.
The rest of the characters besides Murph and Cooper really aren't in like even the same league.
Right.
Like again, their strongest thing is that family ties, and if any of them were in danger, that felt like a high risk and like high
priority.
priority, and you felt that pressure if
Right.
anything happened between them. But everybody else kind of fell to the wayside. So like, I mean, everything looked nice.
Oh, yeah.
Everything, acting, superb with especially Matthew McConaughey. But yeah, I don't know. The first time it was definitely a whole lot different. The second time I'm kind of like, I guess it wasn't the thing I was expecting. So like, I think ultimately it did do very well in that family ties and probably everything else. It could have been just a little bit like not to, I guess, the level of like, it's hard because, with 2001 and anything after that, it's hard to reach that,
Yeah.
even though I had problems with it too.
Mhm.
But maybe just, seeing it again and it just, you see why it's been regarded as one of the best science fiction films, right?
Yeah.
And anything trying to is kind of like, oh man, these are big shoes to fill. And you
Right.
see the, I guess the issues that come along with going that realm.
Mhm. Yeah. Again, I think both are good films in their own right. Yeah, I think that, yeah, it's really difficult because we want to make comparisons, and whatnot. But they both definitely have different goals in mind, and both obviously at different times. But definitely, I would say they both have their place in their own like respective like audience and what it's trying to do and what it's trying to say.
Right.
And there we have it, Christopher Nolan's epic science fiction film, Interstellar. We hoped you enjoyed listening and watching this episode, and we'll see you on the next one.
Thank you for listening to this episode of The End Credits. Follow us on Facebook and Instagram at The End Credits Podcast and over on Twitter at The End Credits. If you're watching the video version, make sure to subscribe to the End Credits YouTube channel. That's it. Thank you and goodbye.